So, hey everyone, next speaker is Nathan Proctor. He's going to be doing a talk on, what's it, right to repair and DMCA. So yeah, take it away.
All right. So hey everybody, I'm Nathan Proctor. I'm a national campaign director with the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, and I was just having a conversation with some folks and talking about how it's a little bit intimidating for me to come in because I'm not an engineer, but I was just thinking, I'm a social engineer, and I'm trying to think about what's happening in our society and how people can organize themselves to deal with these problems. And that's why I care a lot about right to repair, because I feel that it's a critical way to challenge some things that are happening in our society that really do not work for people. And I want to read this quote. So Representative Jeff Barker, a Democrat from Portland, says, under the headline, "Oregon lawmakers want to help mom and pop shops repair your iPhone. They'll have to get past Apple first. No state legislature has successfully addressed the monopoly on tech repairs." So Rep. Barker says that he doesn't support the current version of the bill because he hopes backers can tailor a bill that doesn't go after the super secret information that industries have. So this is the super secret information, which I found by searching Google. This is a schematic from an iPhone. And you can't possibly, it's amazing how little information here is secret in any conceivable way. This is just an accurate measurements as to what the physical device is. It would help you create a replica. It would not help you create an iPhone, but it helps you fix it. And the reason why we can get schematics for iPhones is because, as you can see, this is a little bit old, but the kind of point holds that the last 4 iPhones are about 60% of the market. There's a couple other older iPhones that have a smaller chunk. But this is what the Android fragmentation looks like. So yeah, there's 5,000 different Android phones. So if you do not have schematics, if the manufacturer does not tell you specific technical information about the phone, and you go to repair it, you're flying blind. And I like to say that this, if you think about what we tolerate for monopolized information with technology, the Apple Watch is there on the right. You're right, or my right. Anyway. Okay. Deal with me, people. User error. And then a regular analog watch is on the other side. One of those is pretty complicated. One of them is just a battery and a few chips. The other way is that they get in our way is these are all different screw configurations for different kind of screws we find and stuff. So some of them make a little sense, and some of them are pretty silly. And you'll find this, every time they just make these screw heads to make it difficult to open stuff. Another thing we're seeing is tiny little logos put on all the different components inside the device. And the finger in this photo is Jessa Jones, who is a micro soldering technician who does board-level repair for Apple products, and she's based in Rochester, New York. And she took this picture to show after she had thousands of dollars worth of spare parts seized by Border Control. So when you ship recycled parts. So when we throw out our phones, they go to these recyclers, and they take the phones apart, and they take usable, valuable components, and they use them to fix things, and that's good, right? That's a smart thing to do, except for Apple puts these tiny logos on everything, and if you don't black them out, then when they go to customs, Apple instructs customs to seize every one of those shipments because those are counterfeit parts, because Apple's not selling them. That's their definition of counterfeit. It doesn't matter what the purpose is. I could literally take my phone, which has an aftermarket battery in it, because I switched it after Batterygate, and ship it to China and back, and Apple would seize that phone at the port because it's a counterfeit Apple phone, because it's not 100% within the Apple walls of their proprietary universe. So why is our stuff so hard to fix? Right? We went through a couple of this. We can't get schematics. They put these ridiculous screw heads on there, and they proprietary screws. They don't provide OEM spare parts, and they block those parts at the ports of entry. They don't give us access to firmware updates. And then, they also have software that locks your phone so that only dealers can unlock. I actually have a cool video here on that last point.
We're going to hook
Turn that up
a laptop up to this combine and try to get codes out of it, I guess. I would say what I'm doing is hacking.
Farms today use a tremendous amount of technology.
DeerMates claims that you only really have the license to use their software. And for someone to say they own the software pretty much takes away the whole viability of the entire tractor or piece of equipment.
The only person that can repair those tractors to a great extent is the dealership.
I mean, look at the size of this machine. If I had to haul this thing 100 miles every time something went wrong with it, it'd cost a fortune. I mean, just to get it on a truck is $1,000, and by the time you get it hauled somewhere and get it hauled back, you're $2,000 into fixing something maybe relatively minor.
What we've had developed is essentially a monopoly on repair. One of the things I've been told some guys are doing to deal with these issues is there's pirated software out there from Eastern Europe that guys are utilizing to try to get around this, to be able to work on their tractors themselves.
I believe the software I got's a hacked version of John Deere's system when it comes to tractors. I mean, I farm, so out of necessity, they break down and I have to repair them in one way or another, and it's a lot cheaper to do it myself than it is to haul it into a repair shop or a dealer to have it fixed. We got lots of, everywhere on a combine there's a sensor here and a sensor there, and every single little part of it has a electrical sensor in it. A couple of years ago we were doing custom anhydrous as fertilizer on cornfields, and you have a real small window to be able to get this done in the year, and the tractor broke down. So I had to find this software to be able to repair my tractor and make my customer happy and make a living. There's a whole selection of the machines based on serial numbers and what they are, and you got to pick the one out that's the right serial number for this machine. And then you'll be able to come over here. Once you get able to get into this, I can go in and I can do a diagnostic on it, and it'll start checking all the codes and looking for what I have wrong. And then I can go up here and I can look at them and see what the problem is and why it's popping up.
In 2015, the Library of Congress granted an exemption to the Digital Millennium Copyright Act that makes it legal for farmers to hack their tractors for the purposes of repair. But software modification is still against John Deere's terms of service, which were updated soon after the ruling. Despite this, Right to Repair is a growing movement that's turning ordinary farmers like Guy Mills into activists.
So the thing that John Deere does is when you change your sensors in your tractor, or actually if you just open the electronic panel on the device, it tells the central computer that panel's been opened, and the tractor will not operate until it's unlocked by the official dealership software. So you have this crazy monopoly on the service of the tractor, which has forced people to essentially hire hackers to break the software so that they can literally farm the fields that they spend $500,000 on these tractors. All right, so what is the worldview that our opposition has, and what are their large goals? And so I like to talk, they talk about the circular economy, but I think that what they're talking about is the circular monopoly. So what do they want? They want to control all the things that we use with the most expansive view of intellectual property possible. They want to consider all the components and all the software and even the shape of the rectangle that the phone is as their thought property. And they want to be able to dictate to us as customers how we use the phone to the maximum benefit of their shareholders. And so we're trying to push back on that. And we want to talk about this idea of ownership. What you own it, you should be able to do what you want with it. You paid for it. You paid for the device, which includes the software and the hardware, right? And so we want customers to have the greatest possible array of choices for future use. And that's something that when you think about open source software and then you think about the hardware issues that we have, these are intimately connected. When you do not have the ability to repurpose hardware because of the way it's locked in with software, it's basically causing a problem, that's completely artificial. It makes artificial obsolescence. So right to repair is a lot of things, but one of the core things that right to repair is doing is trying to pass state laws that require companies to give us access to 5 different parts of the devices that we own. One is the technical schematics, the repair documentation, so that we can do all the maintenance, all the information for maintenance, that they would sell us on fair and reasonable terms, the OEM spare parts, or any kind of special screwdrivers that they felt the necessity of designing, that they would give us access to the diagnostic software and the ability to update the firmware, to apply patches, to flash the system to factory settings or whatever we want, because it's our device with our firmware. Okay, so all of that is on fair and reasonable terms, which for all the information is free, and then for the parts and tools is the same price that they charge their own dealers. And that's what this law is that we're trying to pass in the States. These are our values. So this is the repair manifesto from iFixit. I think it's cool. I think you should download one and put it up in your workspace because it's cool. But yeah, we believe that repair is good and repair is empowering, and it's part of how we can democratize our technology, because right now we're seeing kind of a really scary consolidation of that. And so here's another picture that I think sums this stuff up, which is used to be that people had control of their own technology and they would make choices like to fix it. And there were people that fixed those things, and they learned a lot of great skills, and then they might have taken those skills and then used those to innovate and create the next solution to kind of more and more better stuff. But now we have this other situation where we're losing all of our repair technicians in our independent repair, and we're creating a giant, unconscionable amount of electronic waste, the largest, fastest growing waste stream in the world. It's 70% of the toxic heavy metals that are going into landfills are from electronic waste, and Americans throw out 416,000 smartphones every day. And you think about all the useful technology that's in a smartphone. I like to say that, like, in Star Trek, they had 5 devices to do what a smartphone does. They just could not even imagine technology that's as useful as we've come up with, but we just treat it as if it's disposable. I mean, those of you in free software can think probably of 100 things with the computing power of a smartphone to do with that technology, but you can't do anything with it because you're forced to throw it away, given the way that they glue the battery in, given the way that they configure those devices. And so we have a national coalition to fight for right to repair. We're secretly mostly 3 people. So it's myself and then Kyle Wiens, the founder and CEO of iFixit, who is cool and awesome, and it's fun to work with him. And then also there's Repair.org, which is a coalition organization headed by Gay Gordon Byrne, who wanted to come today but sadly couldn't make it. So this is us. This is my network. So USPERC is part of the Public Interest Network, and so one of the reasons why we're able to move on so many fronts is we're in a lot of different states. As you can see, we're all over the place. Fighting in so many places that I'm sure Apple's lobbying bills have become quite extensive. There's also we have a bunch of other groups in the coalition with us, all the cool people, a lot of both businesses that work to try to maintain technology or recycle electronics, but then also groups like EFF, who are kind of leading thinkers about copyright and things like that. And so we're taking a step back. Right to repair is one of the fronts is the state laws. So this map is a little bit of a picture of all the different states that are active right now. There actually might be a couple more than are listed here. There's one in Vermont that's not on here. that was introduced fairly recently. But we have bills in states that would require access to the 5 things that I said earlier, schematics, parts, diagnostics, firmware, special tools, in all of these states. And so we're spending a lot of time running around dealing with, like our first slide, a Representative Jeff Barker from Portland, Oregon, who thinks that a schematic is a top secret piece of information. The kind of solution we have here comes from the fact that we have right to repair for automobiles, which actually came from Massachusetts. So in 2012, Massachusetts voters voted like 87% to 13% to force auto manufacturers to release the repair and service information and software needed to maintain our cars so that people could have a choice of their own automobile technician. And yeah, because we want, it's obviously what people want is the choice of what to do with these cars. And they were making all these special proprietary diagnostic ports in cars. So another part of that law is actually change in engineering where they had to provide a standard port so that if you're an independent auto mechanic, you could plug in and you could read the codes, you know, which is surprisingly a thing. And now there's a new bill in Massachusetts because auto manufacturers have found a loophole in the way the law was written by, instead of having the software in the dealership, because that was the law, is like it has to be the same for the dealership as it is for an independent, they have the dealership just hook up by Wi-Fi to the car, and they have a central computer for the OEM that runs all the codes, and because they don't have to provide any of that information to the dealership, then they don't have to provide it to the independents, which is crazy because if the internet goes out, then you can't fix your car anymore. And it's crazy for like 45 other reasons. But it's just about monopoly control, and so there's a new bill now to kind of force them to stop doing that. But after Massachusetts passed this bill, by 2014, this was a national agreement, and every state in this country, and any car is sold, you have the right to repair it, except for these new cars with these crazy Wi-Fi systems. But anyway, and then, so that's just state laws. So there's bigger problems with right to repair than just access to those 5 things. And that's where the kind of DMCA work comes in. And you saw in that video that it mentioned expressly that we've been fighting for exemptions to Section 1201 of the DMCA. So I should take a step back. I didn't even say what so DMCA is the worst law ever, as you know. And it's a law that was intended to stop people from pirating, you know, music and video games and movies. And they created a whole set of these digital rights management systems, and also they created these crazy penalties for the circumvention of those systems. And pretty soon after that, companies started using their digital rights management systems to lock out all kinds of other usability of the device that goes way beyond playing of media. So why do they put the anti-lock brake system in your car behind the same DRM shield as the Bluetooth music player? It's because they want to lock you out of as much as they can. They could easily design it so that the DRM shield only applies to the media. But they didn't do that because they really want to convey every line of code in that car as their special thought property and not as your physical property. That is, as a necessary functioning of the device that you paid for. So we've been working really hard on fixing those problems with DMCA, but of course we probably also need to rewrite the DMCA and have a totally different regime when it comes to copyright. And that is a longer project. So, and as you know, the EU is currently voting on a really horrible copyright update written by manufacturers, essentially, which would make it much more difficult to have anyone profit from digital media except for a handful of small companies. So we're not in a good place in the broader sense of the public on what it means to have copyright and what it means to work for us, which is why I think the right to repair battles are so critical, because we've actually started to win people over to the idea that they actually own this thing, and we've pushed back on what the manufacturers are doing. And then the third thing that we have been, that's part of the right to repair movement, is the idea that we can fix a throwaway mentality. We can go from, Steve Jobs' vision for our computers was that it would be like a magic box, that we wouldn't have any idea what was inside of it, and we would just behold its glory. And he designed with that kind of goal in mind. But there's a consequence to us not having any power over the things that we need to run our economy and to interact with the world. And which is why I think we need to empower people to control the technology in their lives. And so this is a scene from a Fix-It clinic, which is a free community event where people come together and fix stuff together for free. And it's totally punk rock, and they fix lamps and they restitch jackets, but they also fix computers and cell phones and all kinds of stuff. There's a UK outfit called the Restart Project, which just focuses on electronics. But yeah, we try to really push back on the idea that the technology is disposable, because we know that if it was designed properly, it could be used for a lot of different things for a long time. We make a lot of new computing devices where we could just repurpose stuff that's already been built. And so we've made some cool progress. So I would say one thing that I wanted to highlight here was a huge win on 1201 exemptions from the DMCA. So basically, it talked a little bit about the farmers have an exemption now to hack their tractors as for necessary repair. But basically, this last October, the Librarian of Congress decided that basically you can hack anything that you own if it's yours. So like you can't, like the purpose of the law was not to block you from having access to your cell phone or to your computer. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it's basically DRM they basically tried to tell the industry what they were doing was not consistent with the law, and it makes our argument a lot more sound. If the Copyright Office says it's not a violation of copyright to modify code in your own device, it makes it harder for them to argue that that's the whole purpose of them setting up these devices where we can't touch them. You see that sticker? Anyone see what that says? Oh, leg, font change. It used to say illegal. It looked really cool. That's too bad. It's a leg. The FTC said that it's illegal to put void warranty stickers on things because, in fact, the warranty is not voided when you fix it yourself. You have a right to do that. It's been baked into anti-monopoly law from certainly in the 1975 Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, but it's been basically from the beginning. It's our stuff. We can fix it. They can't condition the warranties on us buying tie-in services from them. And now the FTC, I did this report, which you see there, 45 out of 50 electronics companies illegally void warranty sting operation. That's a little bit much for what we did, but we did a survey and we found basically everyone does this. Everyone conditions warranties against independent repair, even though it's illegal to do so. And now the FTC has signaled a new fact-finding. So we're working with some federal regulators to deal with that. So anyway, I'm pretty much wrapping up here. There's ways you can get involved. You can check out repair.org. If your state is one of those states with a bill, you should let your legislators know that you want it to pass. You can, and this is one last thing I wanted to highlight, and then I'll take some questions. SecureRepairs.org. So one of the things that manufacturers will come and do, and I can talk a little bit more about the crazy stuff they say in legislators around the country as reasons why we shouldn't have ownership over the stuff that we buy. One of the things that they say is that it would really damage cybersecurity if we had access to ability to patch our own firmware. Because that's really dangerous, guys. I mean, I don't think you know just how complicated and scary this stuff is. And it's amazing. The people they have to come in and testify have literally never opened anything or fixed anything. I mean, they claim that the diagnostic software that they provide to diagnose an iPhone could give you access to all the user data. And I'm just like, okay. please bring an engineer from Apple in here and say this to them and watch them die because you've said that they've made the most awful security it's possible. I mean, can you imagine if all 47,000 Apple employees could access any encrypted data just by plugging it into their diagnostic software to check the battery health? Anyway, they say crazy things. So we've created this group. This is just led by this guy in Belmont here in Massachusetts named Paul Roberts, who is the editor of the Security Ledger, which is an Internet of Things security website. And he's looking for people who know about cybersecurity to sign our kind of statement of principles that fixable stuff is secure, and security by obscurity is an insane and ludicrous way to operate. So if you're interested in checking that out, if you have a security background. But now I'm going to pause there, and we'll take questions.
So yeah, if you have questions, come down and line up. You might be able to raise your hand if I can grab the other microphone, but for now, come on down and come down to the mic if you have questions.
Hello. Thank you for the talk. So you mentioned that the right to repair bill asks the manufacturers to release diagnostics, and I presume if it's software that can fix your stuff, that those software too. And I imagine those software will be proprietary, which means that if you want to fix your stuff, you have to run their proprietary diagnostic software. Wouldn't it make more sense so that the law requires that manufacturers give their users the ability to modify their software directly, or somehow to expose how the diagnostic tools works instead of just releasing whatever proprietary software they decide to use. Thank you.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I wish the law could go a little bit farther towards like the vision of the world that is shared by a conference like Libre Planet, to give us total control over the device software and hardware. The idea of the bill is we know that they already have this software, and we know they already have these tools and parts, and they just have to give us access to it. So, but I agree with you that like it would be better if they equipped us to actually maintain this stuff and modify it ourselves. And then with the DMCA rules that were released in October, we clarified that we have a legal right to do whatever we want to the software, within other law. Like you can't do something illegal with it, but if you wanted to modify it for another legal purpose, that is your right. It's not easy to do, and manufacturers could make that easier, but I agree that that's something that I wish we could accomplish that, but that's not currently kind of on the table. It's a good question.
All right, this is going to be quite similar, but it sounds like the right to repair focuses highly on getting equipment that works fine to begin with, but then breaks. In my case, in my current car, there are bugs in the software.
Yeah.
In which, and in the freedom sense, it would be great to fix, but as you were talking about, it would be super complicated. It's broken on arrival. I don't know if you have any coverage on that sort of topic.
Yeah, no, we don't. I think we spend a lot of time trying to point that stuff out to lawmakers because, basically the manufacturers come into these offices and say, we have these pristine products, they work perfectly. If somebody opens it and tries to do something, it's going to turn into a death machine. And literally, some lobbyists from the Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers said that if we let people tinker with their washing machines, they would turn into death machines, right? Because what if the latch locking software was altered and the door popped open and your child put their arm in and was torn limb from limb? And And it's just, yes, what if that happens? Also, what if I had to pay $900 to fix a $400 washing machine because you've monopolized the service of it? So I agree with you, and I think that part of what Right to Repair hopes to convince people is that, you know, we need to democratize the technology. We need to open up the maintenance of these things. The manufacturers don't have all the answers, and that they need to work with us, the people in the world, maintaining the things that they create. And I hope that we get to more of that.
We got a question in from IRC next. And the question is, how would one get started in component level repairs, and what books and equipment can I get to get started?
Sorry, I'm going to read it. Component level repairs. Oh, okay. So my cool friend Jessa Jones does micro soldering. So to basically do board level repairs on Apple products. And luckily, there's this thing called the internet, and it tells you how to do. There's somebody out there who can do it, and they'll tell you how to do it because people have this value of community over, competitiveness. The cool people do. And so, I mean, I would say, like, it depends on what you want to fix. I mean, the tinkering resources out there. I love Jessa's YouTube channel to talk about micro soldering and board level repairs for Apple products. I think it's totally awesome. But there's a lot of people out there, and you should check it out. Yeah.
Kind of along a similar line, is it legal to? Would it be legal to produce something like a Wikipedia of stuff, where you kind of agglomerate all the repair manuals together? And have people tried to do that before? It's where you use search.
You are describing the greatest website on earth, called iFixit.
Oh, okay.
It's the open source manual for everything. So you can literally fix, like, your jewelry or your Jeep Wrangler or your iPhone 6. It's kind of amazing. They have more than 50,000 different products that they have repair manuals for now.
All right, great.
Yeah, it's a good plug.
Thank you so much for coming out, and I thought your talk was fantastic. I thought particularly interesting the part about how manufacturers have basically done an end run around the will of the people established already in right to repair laws. And I think it really points out the fact that, you know, the real problem here is that capital markets, if we expect that capital markets are going to resolve our problems, are clearly hopelessly broken and are not actually funding innovation. So there's sort of like various attempts to work around that with WeFunder or things like that. Are you aware of anything like seriously trying to free up manufacturing capital for people who actually want to manufacture things and not run intellectual property businesses?
I wish I had a good example for that. No, I agree with you that, like, building, people who innovate technology with the value that it should be, like, they're contributing to the world and not trying to take a piece of it that they can monopolize. And but yeah, I don't know of such a platform, but I'm enthusiastic about someone making one. Yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you for the talk. If people haven't heard this, this is really good news to get out there. Of course. This is about the Massachusetts right to repair in 2012. And the thing that struck me about that is how lopsided it is, 87% or something. And it's either Massachusetts is the home of all the auto mechanics of the nation, or it's one of those general subjects that people just get it, perhaps about ownership, perhaps about recycling and that kind of thing. And I was curious if during your research, if you figured out how that made it to the ballot versus being handled just legislatively. Yeah. Because I feel if the question went to basically any state, people are going, whether they're a technician or not, are going, well, you bought it, it's yours, duh. So I was wondering if you knew how that made it, because I couldn't. Yeah,
it's a very insightful question. I think that, this kind of goes back to my kind of opening where I said, like, I'm a social engineer. And the reason why I'm working on right to repair is, I think, because it does make sense to people. And it becomes immediate, like, the thing that we're trying to express they immediately internalize, like, oh, that's right, like how I can't fix my phone and they force me to get a new one. Oh, that begin to, like, it's an entryway into the creating systems that give the democratization of our technology. So I think I love that part of your point. And then specifically on how it worked in Massachusetts, it got to the ballot because the proponents, gathered 120,000 signatures, which is very time-consuming and very expensive. And it didn't pass the legislature because the auto dealerships put a lot of money into lobbying, and the auto manufacturers. But really, the dealerships care more about it than the manufacturers, because the dealerships are the ones who benefit from the monopolized service of the cars. And so we see this a lot, like with John Deere. Like, John Deere designs these incredible monopoly lockouts for their tractors. But the dealers are the ones who are terrified that we're going to break those monopolies open, and they will not have they'll not be able to use the monopoly system to guarantee their own business. That terrifies them. So that's the political reality, is there's just a ton of money coming against us. And it's going to, but once if the people, like the voters, were actually say, hey, do you think that you should have monopolistic repair systems, or everyone should have access to whoever they want to hire to fix anything that they want? They're going to choose the latter. But in order to actually get it in front of, Massachusetts, which has a ballot system, they put up a lot of barriers to make it incredibly hard to put things on the ballot, because they do not want people to vote on what they really want. Democracy overall needs a little bit of a boost. We need to kind of get back to controlling things in the commons, and our repair, and our voting, and a lot of other stuff, and our software. And I think that that's a value that we as Americans need to kind of really build towards, because I think it'll solve a lot of the problems that we have, quite frankly. And especially as someone who's organized in politics for a long time, I can tell you, it's hard to find a problem where there's not also an opponent that's a vested special interest that's somehow blocking an 80% public interest issue from moving forward because they can capture the political system with money. Okay, and then I think we're out of time, but.
So the question is.
Let me read it. Thanks for the speech. Will laws that force right to repair on companies prevent companies from making smaller and smaller high-tech products? Does it stunt innovation? I'm going to go with no. Companies make a lot of stuff that is impossible to fix, and no one has the expectation to fix it. So when you get a phone from Samsung and you find out that it's basically just the cavity is completely filled with glue, and that if you go to authorized Samsung repairer, they have a $30,000 machine that heats it up and slowly opens it because it's a glue-filled monstrosity, and you need a $30,000 machine to open it, right? So that makes the maintenance of that phone a lot more expensive, right? So if people had the expectation that things could be fixed, and then they took it in, they're like, oh, how do I open my Samsung Galaxy 9? They're like, oh, you need this $30,000 proprietary machine. I think that we begin to create consumer forces that would force people to actually engineer stuff that's more durable. So that's one problem, is that it's not that they're making these super small gadgets and therefore they put no engineering expertise into making them fixable. They're just rushing stuff to market without really kind of innovating sustainably. And this would force, I would think, some consumer pressure on them to innovate more sustainably. So, and maybe it will change what innovations come. And I hopefully will make them innovate the sustainability, because my children are not going to have smartphones unless we stop having 18-month guaranteed to die electronics in 2019, because the components, the rare earth metals, will be so incredibly expensive because we'll have used up all the rare earth metals on the planet, and the only ones who will be able to have a cell phone will be like the military or the billionaires, because we've consumed all of this stuff with this disposable electronics that are made artificially disposable. That's what I think about that. All right. Thank you all. That was awesome. It's an honor to be here.
All right, so, yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nathan. So, yeah, it's lunchtime now, so if you want to go head out, get some lunch, and come back for the next round of talks after that, have a great time. So, yeah, cheers.